All right, welcome everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. Shane, could you actually turn off the lights here for the in-person audience so we can see the slides? Welcome everyone to the first ever Santa Cruz Gardens Town Hall. I wanted to get up here in the spring, but we had trouble just negotiating a time with the school, and they were still under COVID protocol, so they weren't going to let us be inside. And I think we were actually even getting just a few drops outside, so it didn't work then. Happy to be here now, and the goal really is to rotate through different neighborhoods, really on about every 6-month basis, so that we can address these issues, flesh them out here tonight, and also then keep coming back and providing updates on where things are and keep moving the ball forward. This is a hybrid meeting, so we've got people both live here at SoCal Gardens or Santa Cruz Gardens Elementary School up in Santa Cruz Gardens here, as well as folks online. And we'll just go ahead and dive in. So as I said, tonight's meeting is focused primarily on Santa Cruz Gardens. I think that there'll be stuff here that'll be of interest to folks who live throughout the first district, but most of the topics will be focused in this area. And when I talk about Santa Cruz Gardens, I'm being fairly generous with the term. So not just the area up here off of Thurber Lane, with access from Thurber Lane, but also issues that will impact the Winkle Park neighborhood. So everything kind of north of SoCal Drive and near Dover and Benson as well. And our agenda tonight, I'll talk a little bit about the climate action and adaptation plan for starters, and then get into how that impacts some of our different transportation related projects throughout the district. And then talk a little bit about the sustainability update, which mostly will impact really our entire urban area, but most immediately the SoCal Drive and Thurber property down there at the bottom of the hill, where the pumpkin patch and Christmas tree lot seasonally now and is otherwise empty. Talk a little about some of the issues that you guys wrote into me about: broadband coverage, fire safety, and then we should have plenty of time for Q&A for anything that I didn't address, any other questions that you brought tonight. So I thought it'd be good to just kind of start from where we are here. I think the heat wave that we've all experienced over the last 4 to 5 days now is pretty impactful. I mean, it seems that every half a mile you come in from the coast, it's another 10 degrees warmer. We broke records across the state, including notably in our state capital, 116 degrees in the last couple of days. And as if that's not enough, we're also seeing a hurricane now headed up from Central America. It probably won't get all the way to us, but it could impact Los Angeles. So there's no doubt that the weather is freaky, and we're really seeing the impacts of climate change right now in our lifetimes. There's hopefully all understand where it's coming from. Number one cause is the cars. So this is I mentioned we're updating our climate action and adaptation plan now, and with that we haven't updated it since 2013. One of the big things we're looking at really is adaptation. I mean, since 2013, we had the storms of 2016 and 17, which caused over $100 million of damage to county roads. We're still digging our way out of that. And we've, of course, also experienced the CZU lightning fires, which destroyed nearly 1/4 of the county and over 1,000 homes. So we're really seeing the impacts firsthand, and they're a lot farther ranging than just sea level rise, which is what we were considering back in 2013. We're also doing a new emissions inventory. So looking at our emissions back in 2009, and the most recent data we have is 2019 and comparing it to that. And if you look at this graph here, well, you can see that. You can see that basically half of our local emissions are coming from passenger vehicles, 48.6 to be exact. And then another 12.9% from commercial vehicles, that's trucks, mostly trucks that ship our stuff or other commercial vehicles. So really taken in together, that's 2/3 of all our local emissions. The other significant portion is really residential natural gas and non-residential natural gas. So the cooking and heating in our homes and restaurants, that's about 23%. Electricity, actually, we've brought to close to zero. Electricity is 0.2% here locally, and that's largely thanks to the creation of Central Coast Community Energy. So PG&E is still bringing you your power through the transmission lines. They're responsible for that. But we set up a publicly owned utility that purchases power and then puts it into our local grid, and that's Central Coast Community Energy. And they have a focus on buying all renewable electricity from various sources across the Western United States. So actually our emissions are way down in the electricity department, and we've made great strides there. But make no mistake about it, we've all got to figure out ways to transition away from gas burning cars because they're what's making it hotter. So these are really the options we have. And I hope all of you will start to think about which option makes most sense to you or which combination of options. So of course, we've heard a lot of talk about electric cars recently. The state has put in new guidelines that every car sold after 2035 will have to be electric. The federal government has recently passed the new, I guess it's called the Inflation Reduction Act, but will largely provide more subsidies for electric cars, as well as for some of these things in our homes, gas burning things in our homes for heating and cooking, subsidies to replace your gas burning stove or put in a heat pump so that you're not burning gas in your house. Electric bikes, we still have a number of subsidies available for those through through a rebate program through Central Coast Community Energy, some other programs locally, both through the Monterey Bay Air Resources District, and also if you work downtown, specifically for downtown residents. I'll talk a little bit tonight also about transit and how we're trying to improve the bus system to come more often and just be of greater use to everyone. Walking, I know it's not easy to do from this neighborhood, but once you do get down to Soquel Drive, there's a fair number of services available today. We'll talk a little bit about how the sustainability update, it really intends to try to create more walkable communities. Remote work, the county continues to allow remote work for all our employees and really try to encourage people whenever possible to work from home. And we're getting as many public agencies as possible on the same, encouraging them to take up the same practices. And then finally, encouraging more people to move closer to where they work. And of course, with Dominican, Sutter, and the other commercial businesses in the area, upper 41st, there's actually a lot of people that commute into this area to work. It's one of the biggest job hubs in the county. And so naturally, it will also be an area where there's a focus to try to build more housing. So let's talk about some of the transportation projects that are in store to try to help people transition to these various forms of moving around that doesn't make our atmosphere hotter. The first is the Soquel Drive Buffered Bike Lane and Congestion Mitigation Program. So this is basically, we'll go from Harbor High all the way to Aptos to State Park Drive, about 5.5 miles. And it will put in 10 miles of either protected or buffered bike lanes throughout that whole corridor. So protected is where there's some kind of a physical barrier, whether it's a bollard or one of these collapsible posts, or sometimes it could be a rubber mat that's raised like you see today in front of the boardwalk. And buffered is where we can't actually fit a physical structure there, but put some wider stripings just so that people feel safer and are safer. We know that the biggest barrier to people getting on a bike is just the feeling of safety. And so that's why it's really a goal to make our community a safer place to bike around. Also not forgetting about pedestrians, and not only will be improving 94 ADA ramps throughout this corridor, but we'll also put in 11 enhanced pedestrian crossings with those rapid flashing beacons where you can hit, even though it's not at a light, you can hit one of those flashers and turn it on so that that cars will stop and you can safely cross. And then we're also looking at getting the vehicles moving more safely through this corridor as well with adaptive traffic signals. So 22 new intersections will have adaptive traffic signals that are actually wired together with fiber, and will be able to read the traffic patterns and improve based on what the optimal schedule is to get as many cars and the bus through as possible. But also, those signals will be able to talk to the bus, so they'll know if a bus is coming, if it will make a difference to stay green for a few seconds longer to help the bus get through, or if the bus is waiting at a signal, it'll also give some priority and change a little bit faster in that direction. This project is scheduled to start this December. Could be as December, sometime between December and March. It depends on when we get approval from the California Transportation Commission on the final plans, but it'll either be as soon as December or as late as March. Yeah, if you could just hold questions until the end, I'm happy to come back to any of these topics. I mentioned the adaptive traffic signals, and actually we're already getting started with rolling some of these out. So the green signals that you see here on the right are the county-owned signals, and we've actually already reprogrammed some of these to talk better to each other. You may have noticed if you've driven through here. The red in the middle are owned by Caltrans. They're just finishing upgrading those to adaptive signals now. And the Capitola, city of Capitola owns the 4 signals in blue there on the left on 41st. Those have been upgraded. And so now the next step is getting all these 3 different groups of signals to talk to each other. We expect to get that done within the next 6 months or so. And then hopefully this becomes a lot easier to get through, and we can really reduce some of the backup in this section as well along 41st. One other improved bike and pedestrian facility you might want to know about is on Clare Street, going towards the new Capitola Library. The city of Capitola is doing some pavement rehabilitation there, putting in new pedestrian crossings, as well as buffered bike lanes, and a fantastic artistic crosswalk by the library with books rendered in it. And so construction on that will start this fall and should be completed by the end of the year. All right, now I'll talk about the highway project that's about to get started here on Highway 1 between Soquel Drive exit and 41st Avenue. So this is something that is being paid for by our taxes from Measure D that was passed in 2016. And it's an auxiliary lane bus on shoulder project, much like was completed between the Fishhook and Morrissey there. So kind of adding entry exit lanes. I know probably if you drive in that, it doesn't feel like it's made a whole lot of difference in rush hour traffic coming home. But we do see some improvement in the mornings if you're getting to work going over 17. And so we expect that once all 3 phases of this project are completed, going through to Aptos and Freedom Boulevard, that could actually make some significant improvements. We do have the funding for both phase 1 and phase 2 of this project. So phase 1 will start, we'll probably start seeing some work this December. It's going to be a fairly extensive project and will continue probably into spring or summer of 2024. It doesn't actually need to block traffic in most cases, but still just the fact that there's construction there, you might notice some slowdowns. But it will construct that shoulder lane and also allow the bus to run in that lane, not only the same time that cars are there, but also through and under the interchanges so that the bus can keep going in that lane and have a dedicated area. We're really looking at this entire improvement to the highway. I mean, you may see the challenge, and at the one hand, I was just telling you that cars are largely causing the problem, and yet we're improving the highway. I think we look at that in terms of, well, we want even electric cars to be able to run fluidly on the highway. Having cars stop doesn't help anyone, stop in traffic. But we're looking at this whole project as a multimodal project. So like I said, improving the flow of the bus in the bus on shoulder lane, and then putting in new bike and pedestrian crossings wherever possible. So there's the one I'm sure you've heard about at Chanticleer. And then in the middle section will be improvements to Capitola Avenue, replacing that whole bridge with wider sidewalks and bike lanes. And then in the Aptos segment, there's a Mar Vista bike and pedestrian overcrossing, as well as the rail trail overcrossings. So really looking at this as multimodal project to get people moving in a variety of different ways is how we're looking at it. Some improvements coming to the metro. Already we've seen 4 new electric buses come into the fleet. I think most of those are in the Watsonville circulator right now in South County, but we are looking to acquire more. We're required to have 100% zero emission buses by 2040. It's a rather aggressive timetable. It is going to take a lot of money that we haven't identified all yet, but Metro will be purchasing more and more zero emissions buses. We're seeing some technology improvements as well. You can ride the bus with an app on your smartphone called the Splash Pass. You can download that now in app stores. And we'll be rolling out automatic vehicle locating software. So basically that you'll be able to see how far away the bus is, both on your smartphone and probably at some of the stops as well. You know, next bus 5 minutes, for example. We'll also be reevaluating service area to see if we can get more concentration on some of the main routes like SoCal or through Live Oak, so that there's greater frequency there. And then there's a promotion going on at the end of this month to ride free between September 15th and 29th. So never a better time to try out our Metro service. Here's another look at the Chanticleer bike and pedestrian overcrossing. So it'll go up from the end of Chanticleer on this side of the highway near Gray Bears there and the SPCA, and then loop over the highway to the other side where the sheriff's office is and the new Pure Water SoCal project. So that's what you're seeing in the right image there is the Pure Water SoCal project going in, and then the bike and pedestrian overcrossing looping over. So this is part of the highway project, and construction will start along with that project this December. We are looking at ways to sort of leverage the investment in that bike and pedestrian overcrossing. And so the new striping updates on Thurber are part of that thinking, extending better bike lanes and better sidewalks to that overcrossing. We did do a survey of the neighborhood to see if that was something that you guys all wanted, and it was a 2/3 vote in favor of adding those bike lanes further up to Kenny Avenue. I had a question about how we conducted that survey and who got the outreach from it. So I use basically information that I have available, which is the voter rolls. So anyone who has a registered email with the voter roll, in the voter rolls, we sent them a survey. We saw of the 300 or so addresses that were in there that we had available for basically all the Santa Cruz Gardens neighborhood and a little bit lower down, just a smattering around Benson. And so of the 300 people that were invited to take the survey, 147, about 50% responded. And you know, I did watch those responses as they came in, and we didn't see a whole lot of variation over time. So it didn't seem like there was any particular pocket of people that felt a whole lot stronger one way or another. And so I felt it seemed like this was a pretty representative response. Other traffic safety options for Santa Cruz Gardens that I've heard of that have been proposed are reducing speed limit from 30 miles per hour to 25 miles per hour. Now that wasn't possible in the past because of just the way we set speed limits. But thanks to a new state law, AB 43, we do have a little bit more leeway in how we set our local speed limits. And so we could actually reduce the speed 5 miles per hour if that's something else that the neighborhood wanted. I've also heard some people that want to see speed bumps put in, others not. Again, I think both with the speed limit and the speed bumps, we'd probably, again, I'd put it out to a survey for the neighborhood. With speed bumps, there's a very defined process. So that we have at the county. It involves collecting signatures from people along the affected roadway, saying that they'd like to see it go into effect, and it has to be over 50% of people who would be impacted. And then there is actually some cost sharing required, just because we see so many requests for speed bumps across the county in the unincorporated area that we do ask residents to pay for 50% of each speed bump. And that's about, surprisingly, these things are $8,000 a piece. So it is $4,000 per speed bump resident contribution. All that said, it is a process that is doable. We've seen some new speed bumps go in recently on Rodriguez Street, for example, between Capitola Extension and 7th Avenue, where they saw a lot of speeding for many years, and I think they've helped. Another suggestion that was floated was to put in a stop sign at Helen and Thurber to try to get people slowing down as they come down the hill. I've discussed this with Public Works, and they think that this is just not advisable because probably as many people would blow through the stop sign as would actually stop, and it could actually create more conflict than it helps. There is a state law that requires us to have what's called warrants, or basically that a stop sign is warranted because of the amount of traffic coming into a roadway from the other street, that in this case Helen Avenue, Helen, and I don't think that there's actually enough cars entering Thurber from Helen to warrant a stop sign based on that. I've also talked to Scott Turnbull, our superintendent of Soquel schools, to ask whether buses would be possible up here to try to reduce some of the school-related traffic. So there's currently no funding for that. They're struggling just with seeing a general decrease in enrollment across Soquel Union School District. I think if we were going to try to get buses, maybe we'll see some help from the state, or we could pursue other avenues, but it's probably not something we can do in the short term. So as I said, I think that open to other suggestions that people have to improve traffic safety here. And my goal would be to do another survey of the community to see what the general support or opposition to reducing the speed limit is, and adding speed bumps. And the speed bumps would probably, it wouldn't be wise to put them on the hill. So they'd probably go at the top of the hill if they were going to go anywhere. So once you're kind of entering the neighborhood one. I will take questions at the end, ma'am, if you don't mind holding them. I've just got a few more slides. The sustainability update to the county general plan. This is actually the largest change to the county general plan that's been proposed for 25 years. And really looks to allow for a little bit more infill development in our urban area. Our county actually has been really good over the years as far as defining an urban limit line and preventing sprawl into some of our more rural areas and taking up farmland. And so the sustainability update is looking at then allowing housing to be built within our urban area. And the goal really is to create 15-minute neighborhoods. It's the concept that you could walk within 15 minutes to all of the main services that you need, whether that's kindergarten, children's park, convenience store, a cultural venue, sports venue, or a large supermarket. So that's largely the goal behind the sustainability update, and then adding mixed use zoning to the urban area of our county to facilitate more people being able to walk to services and get out of their cars. And probably the part of the sustainability update that would concern this neighborhood the most is the specific proposed rezoning for Thurber and Soquel Drive. So that property I mentioned that is currently alternates between Pumpkin Patch and Christmas Tree Lot. It's about 5 acres. And over the years, it's been stopped we haven't seen any development move forward there because of the urban arroyo that goes through there. And there's questions on how that should be dealt with. The sustainability update does an environmental impact report on options either to pipe that arroyo underground the way it is both above and below the property, or to leave it open and deal with it in that way. So it hasn't been settled one way or another, but the update would effectively provide a path forward on either of those options for the property, as well as provide some new zoning. So right now it's just zoned for professional administrative office type buildings and C1 commercial, which is really kind of neighborhood commercial. And the proposed rezoning is to add some residential as well as C2, which is a little bit more intensive commercial use. I see this as an opportunity to really make this entire part of Live Oak a lot more walkable, to create some kind of community gathering space where there can be a public meeting, coffee shop, connections to Winkle Park. So the county actually owns another 2 acres next to the existing Winkle Park, just on the other side of that urban arroyo I mentioned, which hasn't really been activated. So one of the goals with any development at this property would be a potential connection over to that side of the arroyo, and trying to utilize the county's existing 2-acre property there, as well as connections to Winkle Park. And then it's on Winkle Avenue. So let's see if you look, if you can see this map, you can see the map, my mouse there moving. It's kind of, yeah, it's in the flat area here, just north of SoCal Drive, kind of behind Upper Crust Pizza. Right there. Yeah, Winkle Farm Park. I suppose, I guess so, yes. You're welcome. And of course, as I've mentioned earlier, another goal with adding some residential zoning there is to provide housing for the local workforce, particularly folks who work at Sutter and Dominican who might be commuting in from South County or further today. So if you have want to get more involved with the sustainability update, the next meeting is September 14th. The Planning Commission is holding a hearing. If you need a link to this, I'm happy to help you get that in a way that's more accessible after the meeting. So Wednesday, September 14th at 9:30 a.m. is the next Planning Commission meeting. And then it'll come to the Board of Supervisors and to me in the late October, early December time range that we'll actually be hearing it. All right, just a couple more slides here. One on broadband and improving internet access to help more people work from home and just enjoy the internet. I've noticed that the internet up here is not great, just even in coming up here in cell service either. So the Board of Supervisors, we've allocated a $500,000 grant that came really from some of the COVID relief money. This was a little bit of discretionary money we had left over. We allocated to Cruz to install 20 wireless broadband access points. They've started by partnering with Live Oak School District and distributed 4 access points on Live Oak schools. I believe they were actually up here at this campus recently. It does offer promise, although their immediate charge is to focus on areas that are lower income and where there's equity issues that could be addressed. So the other spots they're looking at nearby are at Emerald Bay Apartments and on top of the Aldo's building in down SoCal Village. So all of those could help improve access in the area. We're also undertaking the county broadband master plan, really to map out accessibility in different neighborhoods. I'm sure that given the poor service here, it would score well given relative density. And then as state and federal money becomes available, we'll be able to use that broadband master plan to deploy the funds faster into projects. One thing that's not on the slide, but we've also updated our cell tower ordinance recently to try to streamline the implementation of new cell facilities. So I think the nearest tower to here that is in process is the one on SoCal San Jose Road by Seventh-day Adventist. Verizon has broken ground on that, and it'll be somewhat faster and easier for other cell towers to be put into place in the future. So that should also help improve cell service in this neighborhood in the long run. Okay, fire safety. I know for a concern for this neighborhood for good reason. With all of the eucalyptus trees that are in the area. And I know that this area going up Thurber, if you're coming up Thurber on the left, is a particular concern with all these unmanaged eucalyptus trees. The county has sent multiple letters out to the property owner, really even to deal with the encroachment issues of all the leaf litter that falls on the street and some of the erosion that's from their property into the sidewalk there. So far, they've been resistant to do anything, and we're working with code compliance to look at taking that a step further, and some possible enforcement actions to help get them to take better care of their property. It is challenging with private property in terms of how much public funds we can actually expend taking care of it. Although we are looking at putting together a larger grant package through our Office of Response, Recovery, and Resilience, something that we could apply for state funding to do some kind of big project that would overall help Santa Cruz Gardens and on sort of our urban area in general. This is considered the WUI or wildland urban interface where fire risk is highest. The other option we could take for dealing with the property I mentioned, as well as just fire safety in the whole neighborhood, is working with the FireWise group. So you do have a Santa Cruz Gardens FireWise community. So they've already become established, and the steps for that were a community risk assessment, a multi-year plan to reduce risk, a community education event, which I had an opportunity to participate in. I was about a year ago now, and then a nominal investment of at least an hour, $25 per household in fire risk reduction. So those steps have been taken, but are also ongoing. So I haven't had a chance to connect with your FireWise committee leaders, but we could make sure that in particular properties like this one are part of the multi-year plan to be addressed, and that would also give us some leverage and greater rationale as we apply for outside monies to help address them. Okay. I don't have it on the top of my finger or the tip of my fingers, but we can definitely share that and look it up, or if you have it and want to share, that'd be great. But your Santa Cruz Gardens FireWise committee leaders are Jeffrey Ellis, Sue Gatch, and Aaron Bush, and their emails are there. And if you need them, I'm happy to share them with you afterwards as well. Yeah, I'll put these slides will be up on the First District webpage and the county side. And then final slide here. Of course, a big part of fire safety is reducing ignition sources. I'm sure y'all heard about the recent fire in Rodeo Gulch near Oil Can Henry's. And then there was another one a year previously, just north of SoCal Drive, below and kind of below Dover, where this star is here. And that's what this picture is of here on the left. It was an encampment from a homeless man who was living there and had a bunch of pallets that caught fire. So this, unfortunately, is still there. There's also a couple of other campers still there. And it's all private property. So this, again, is the challenge of getting private property owners to take more responsibility, both in the protection and management of their property. I've been exploring multiple options to deal with it. Again, we can't come in there with a bunch of public money that is limited and clean up the property if there's not going to be some assurance or relationship with the property owner that it's not going to happen just again and within 5 months to be back to the same use. So one thing that I've explored is creating potentially public access, similar to what you see here in the middle, which is the De La Viega Vineyard Trail. So they behind the Prospect Heights neighborhood, below the De La Viega Golf Course and above the neighborhood. They used to have a lot of similar issues with encampments, and they did a combined public access and fuel reduction project. It kind of allows you to go after grant funding for both sources, fuel reduction and public access. And is now a pretty beloved trail, as you can see there, with many people hiking it. So that's something that I've discussed with the private property owners, and they all realize they got a problem and are open to doing something like this. However, I also want to make sure that it's something that the community wants before we move forward. And if it would be out of sight, I think, of some of the condominiums along Dover Drive there, but maybe within earshot. So that's also something you want to make sure that would be acceptable to folks living there. So that's another. If any of you guys have opinions on that tonight, I'd love to hear them, and something we'll continue to explore. that's all I have for you in terms of slides. And now I'm happy to take any questions, both about stuff I shared or other questions on things I didn't.
So is there a process for dealing with private property owners?
I'm sorry. So we do have an online audience as well. So this microphone will just make it allow them to hear you. So if you could just speak in the mic, you won't hear yourself louder on the AV system, but it does allow the folks online to hear you.
So my question is there a process for dealing with private property owners? You mentioned the one of Third and SoCal, that whole area there. But there's also down on Rio, there's a private property owner that has property that has eucalyptus trees out of control, no matter whatsoever. So does the county have a process for going to property owners to do something to require risk mitigation, or is it a piecemeal approach?
So we don't have specifically related to fire yet. CAL FIRE has been working with Mateo to develop something along those lines. You know, basically would require folks to trim the weeds and cut back the trees to reduce fire risk. Most of what we have today is related to you know, erosion into a public right of way. Or you know, leaf litter in a public right of way, or other impacts on public facilities, or just bad enough considered a public nuisance. So we've talked about you know, approaching private property owners with that existing code as well. You know, really the goal is always to try to work with the property owner, really collaborate and take it forward, right? In order. Or we have to put a limit on the property, hope that either they're going to sell it someday or so that we can recoup the funds. But it's definitely a long, drawn out and difficult process. You know, even if there is laws directly that related to fire risk. So that's why really the best approach will probably be to do something through the FireWise group to identify it as a risk to the overall neighborhood. And then go make sure it's in that the FireWise neighborhoods plan, and then try to identify some mitigation funds that way. Then you're next.
The FireWise meetings that we have FireWise.
Central Fire, yeah.
And they do have them, and I don't remember the site name specifically. Right here. Put up to you. But they do have their knowing and all of these issues were specifically addressed. I only like we have an online meeting and we have 4 meetings around Secretary's Gardens. They definitely have to
For the private property around it.
they talk about it. So, one name that was not on that list, Sonia, yeah.
I did with Sonia Leclerc, and she's the one that said she's no longer part of the committee and suggested talking to these 3 folks.
So I yeah, I did meet Aaron.
Yeah.
They definitely are very active. And they were very good. A lot of links and suggestions. And actually, that's one of my issues. Chaminade property near the end of River. And so I would like to have, when you directly talking to these owners, that Shauna property is also one of the major concerns. The other thing that I wanted to address too, backing up, when we were talking about slowing down traffic on the river and speed bumps. I have a photo speed bumps on the home of the would be very difficult.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, well, as far as I didn't have a chance to connect with Marco Mack and the committee Firewatch for the Firewise neighborhood ahead of time, but I'll definitely follow up with them where we are as far as putting these properties in plan and make sure they are and look at some next steps as far as applying for funds. So thank you for that suggestion. And it's is the mic on? Because I didn't. Right. All right. And then, yeah, as far as the speed bumps go, the Public Works doesn't think that there'd be an option for the hill either, that if they did go in, it would have to be on the flat part at the top of the hill. So yes, ma'am, you're up. And if you could just speak into the mic so that the online audience can hear you.
There are a couple of fire issues. Most important one is there is one fire over.
So the question is about the right. You're talking about into the top of Benson there. That right is Winkle, right. And so you're asking the county can require that to be open.
No, I'm asking what you can do about the gate being bolted.
Right.
I can show you.
Right. So you're asking the gate between Winkle and Benson be unbolted so that it's an egress point. Yeah, right. I can look at that. I don't think that we can require that it be open at all times. Certainly, the fire department has keys that can unlock it. I'm happy to look into it further if there's some way we can ensure that.
I went to the fire department and spoke with one of the men there and told him about it. And he says, "Where is that? Is by Kennedy?" He didn't know the road.
They know they have a key. They know that that's a.
Yeah, excellent.
Secondary restaurant.
What part of the county do you live in? In the first district?
I lived in the harbor.
Harbor is in the county.
Yes, it is.
Our district.
It is, ma'am. I do know what you're talking about. Like, as you just heard, I don't think that we can require the gate open or unbolted at all times. The fire department has a key that they can open it if there is a need to evacuate.
Right, all at once.
Chris, I went to some of the Firewise at two residentials. Oh, yes. I attended a couple of the meetings, the private residences here. in the last couple of years with the fire marshal. And he showed us videos of how fast a fire starts, especially fire alarms come uphill, and the eucalyptus is behind my house on Rio, the downhill. He showed us how fast a fire will go up a hill. It's a minute, even though we have a fire department down the street from us, down Thurber. By the time they would be able to get ready and up here, the fire would already be on my roof if we had a fire. And it was maybe a few years ago now, there was a fire actually in that property behind where I lived. A couple of private homes back there, and I believe it was a transformer that blew in the middle of the day. And luckily, one of the homeowners was outside, saw it, and we had the fire department. I think there were 2 or 3 fire trucks that came up, and they were able to take care of it. But we were lucky, I think. It wasn't as dry. It was maybe 3-4 years ago now. So it's a big concern, and also the one way out. I'm guessing that if this subdivision was built now, as opposed to in the early 60s, they would have designed it so that there were multiple ways to get out. In Prospect Heights, I think they have a similar issue with eucalyptus, but at least they have more ways they can get out other than the one paved road down Thurber. The other thing that the fire marshal mentioned is that if they were to build this subdivision now, they would have to have incorporated some defensible space, some management easements.
Right.
In other words, probably the houses that are on this side of Cabrillo, the greenbelt side of Cabrillo, would never have been built. So, and the other thing that he mentioned too, the fire marshal, was that he can go to the property of the neighbor behind us whose property the eucalyptus is on, because at one point in time they were growing over our yard, virtually over our roof. He can go to that property, and as long as that there's a dispensable space around that person's house, they can't say anything about the eucalyptus trees that are endangering my house. They only have the authority to evaluate his structure and whether or not he's created a defensible space around his structure.
Right. It sounds like if we were to pursue some kind of, fire risk abatement requirement, similar to what I mentioned San Mateo's looking at, that it should be one of the things that should be incorporated there is potential risks to your neighbors, from vegetation growing on your property. Right. Okay, thank you. That's a good suggestion. I mean, I'm sorry that that's the case, and we'll try to create some more enforcement mechanisms to deal with it.
You've seen it. It's an iron swinging gate that meets in the center, and then there's like a bolt, a sliding bolt that locks the 2 halves of the gate together, and it's padlocked. And it would seem to me that an easy fix for the emergency of getting out in a minute or 2 would be if it were a breakaway bolt. And we can't have a unique situation here. It must have happened many times. So that at least, if it would take 3 minutes for the firemen to come and unlock it, in the meantime, people wouldn't have to crash their truck through that gate to open it. It would just break away. And there could be a little sign on it, this is for emergencies only. Don't open this gate, blah, blah, blah.
There already
And
is.
yeah, so anyway, I don't know if that's legal, illegal, or to whom to address that little suggestion.
Sure, I'll discuss that particular emergency access point with the fire and MAC, and see if that some kind of breakaway bolt would be an option, and also if so, then to work on that with the Benson Avenue neighbors. Are there any questions on this side of the room? Go ahead, you, and then I'll come back to you now.
Supervisor Koenig.
Yeah,
It looks like
one minute. Yes, Christina?
Sonia Leclerc is in the meeting. She's
Okay.
online and she says there are up to 4 neighbors on each side of the gate who have keys to open the gate, plus the firefighters on Thurber do now have the keys.
Okay, so your neighbors who live immediately adjacent to the gate have keys and can open it. Sounds like that's the solution that okay, I mean, we got, as well as the firefighters who, you know, are at the station there, so there are some redundancy. Mhm. Thank you, Sonia. Go ahead.
Yes. One of the things that I was going to share with some of the discussion about the way that our neighborhoods are designed. Pocket neighborhoods that only have access out and out. But you have input on here. Anticipation of next development. Slide it out. How areas where we can take the pressure off. Thurber, and my perspective is traffic is not. It's that the residents and all the other parts of the neighborhood appreciate that just way in and out. It's there, it's quieter, residential. There are people, children, people that are there. That's how that's. So I feel like that actually applies to what you're talking about with the firewise stuff. I really would love to see us all together to try. You know, I feel like people have a this property with reason. You know, not everybody. Prospect Heights have several parts that are specific. Right. Maybe you could mention something about sustainability.
Yeah, there are no roads contemplated in the sustainability update. It's really dealing primarily with zoning and design standards. I think, you know, sounds like the main thing you're talking about would be the connection from Winkle Avenue up, you know, towards Benson, and that's a sure.
I will, through road and way. I thought were wrong because they're trying to make us creating block, you know, by design, we just have like little pockets that are locked in like that. Have a whole bunch of open space like the Gulch, Shaman on property. You have all that in neighborhoods. Somebody's got to either have more access sequestered. Very dangerous. Also require access.
I mean, there could be opportunities to create some new connections. I mean, as I said, the county owns the property there at the end of Prescott next to Turkey Park or Winkle Farm Park. And so maybe there could be a connection there between Thurber and Prescott, you know, that would only, yeah. So I'm, happy to continue to explore connections.
Study. Just the time to ask for more into the natural aspects that
Mhm.
are.
Yeah, those are great suggestions. Thank you for making them. And, this is sort of just the initial step in any process to, for development on that site, the zoning kind of enabling what could be done there. But I'm sure that if that piece is done, that we'll have more meetings with the property. Sure, to repeat the question, she was just saying that it'd be nice at that Thurber and Soquel Drive property there to see, in addition to some kind of community meeting space, some study space for students or something like the Live Oak Library Annex that's being created at Simpkins Swim Center, or other public facilities. So my point is just that this is just the beginning of anything potentially happening there. And we'll ensure that if it moves forward with the rezoning, that we'll have further community meetings, if a project comes forward, and also about the potential use of the public property there between the empty parcel and Turkey / Winkle Farm Park.
Excuse me, Supervisor Koenig.
Yeah, I did mention that, and that's what's being addressed in the sustainability update. Go ahead, Christina.
It's been difficult to hear the audience when they speak into the mic. And I wonder if, since your sound system is really good on your computer, if you maybe didn't even use the mic and it still might be able to pick up what they're saying. So I was wondering if we could try that out and see how that sounds.
Sure. Have we tried using both different mics? Okay. Yep.
Is the school. So you were saying that
Close to your. Yeah.
you were saying that this SoCal school district supervisor said populations are going down. And there's that many students that live in Santa Cruz Gardens that go to school here. Perhaps it adjusts the populations between acres. SoCal Main Street, Live Oak.
Right.
Lots of schools. Sure. Year-round school at some of those other schools. Because I don't think there's that many students in Santa Cruz.
Right.
I would guess
Sure.
student population for all that traffic coming up here to come to the school. Certainly.
Right. Right. So the question, just to repeat for the online audience, is whether or not some of the student population attending Santa Cruz Gardens Elementary could be shifted to other schools like Green Acres or Live Oak Elementary. I mean, sure. Yeah, the one challenge is it's a different school district. So Live Oak School District versus SoCal Union School District. I mean, another is that when you start shifting populations around like that, I mean, it already seeing a decline. It could force this school to close for not having enough students. It's a pretty gnarly problem. I mean, I would defer to SoCal Union Superintendent Scott Turnbull on what the ramifications of such a shift would be. But it's education is one thing that I don't have direct jurisdiction over. If that's a question you'd like me to direct to Scott and get back to you on, I certainly look at it, but I don't know where the majority of kids that come to this school live, so can't speak to that. Okay. Yeah, Vicky.
There are kids even across the freeway in Live Oak that are in this school district. And then there are people, families who are moving in here with young kids. As they grow up, they will go to this school. And our concern over the last 5 years that our granddaughter's been here is the speeding of the traffic on Thurber. And it isn't always just the school traffic. There are young people who live up beyond here, and they sort of blow through the stop sign like it doesn't exist. And that's one of the reasons I've really been pushing for speed bumps, is because of this. I have studied speed bumps in this town. Mission Hill has ones that go up and then it's like a crosswalk. It levels off and then goes down. It isn't one of these jarring things that kill you. In Salinas, and I have pictures that I was going to give to you on it that show they have gaps for the fire trucks. So the fire trucks don't have to go over the speed limit, but because their axles are wider, they can do that, but then it doesn't help. It keeps the cars slowing down, but not the fire trucks. We have a problem that we had no crossing guard right up here this year. And I was thinking of the ones that are like on Capitola Road by the DMV. You push the button and they're all solar controlled, and then they flash. And I'm thinking that probably in the long run will be less expensive than paying someone to be the crossing guard. But there are the cars due to speed. We watch them just sort of slow down sometimes and turn the corner like the stop sign isn't there. And that's a real big concern for us. And monitoring the speed limit, like my neighbor just said before I came, he said, even though the speed limit's posted, people don't even obey that speed limit. And I have never in all the years I've lived here seen highway patrol ticket anybody, stop anybody. And that's what I'd like to see a little more of highway patrol enforcement of the speed limit. And as you get up to the top of Thurber and Wakefield, the speed limit on the next block is 25. So we don't understand why it's not 25 from, say, Helen on up. And I think there are more children than you realize, and there are more children, young children growing up who will be coming to this school. So that's our big concern. And you live on the street, you know, I'd like to see the people slow down, not just for the kids.
So, yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, okay. So as I mentioned, there is a process for speed bumps for any neighborhood, and it really involves collecting signatures to ensure that the majority of residents are in favor of them, and then the cost sharing element. So what I can do to help further the process would be to start with the digital survey to see if there's just, you know, get over that 50%, if there is enough interest to validate moving forward. If so, then I would have to go through that physical process of collecting signatures and validating. You had asked about the speed limit issue and why it's 30 and 25, and we do finally have the ability to change the speed limit another 5 miles per hour less. It's because of the way speed limits are set based on the 85th percentile and all this stuff, but we have a little more leeway now, so it could be changed down to 25. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Could you hit the lights if you don't mind?
So talk to your neighbors to slow down. The signs that are right, like your child is here, even people on Thursday, that's kind of as I am my freshman lady and maybe brushing up but anyway, I think one of the biggest problems is so many cars are. I think what started maybe have this announcement that said, okay, there's no money for buses, and no money for budget for buses. But if you, and this was like, this notice was given to us in March, towards the end of the year, and it said, if you're willing to pay $100 or whatever, who's gonna be willing to say, yeah, I want to fork that money over when there's too much left in school, and then the bus system just was, you know, dictating, well, every school, county, and it's the most ridiculous thing. So poor kids, after COVID, for how many years, we've been driving to all these different schools, forever, it's congested, and talk about pollution and all that. We need buses back in our schools. It's just, it's a ridiculous thing. All these parents that are taking all the time that it takes, sitting in the traffic, coming up here, rushing, whatever. And I don't know, maybe parents need to be asked again, would you be willing to pay money? It's like it was asked one time, taken out of the budget on every school, and never to be seen again. All the congestion, all the traffic, it's ridiculous. Morning and afternoon, just nonstop. And then you have kindergarten and in fifth grade, you come in twice. It's ridiculous. We need buses back to-
I generally agree with you. It's an amazing amount of school traffic that's created all over the county. And I do know, I mean, Loma Prieta School District is actually, I think, the only one that still has buses, and they pay for it with an additional parcel tax. SLV as well. Okay, great. I mean, so yeah, I mean, we could certainly look at something of at each school district putting on a question to you know, their area about the you know, whether folks want to support school buses again. Yeah.
Had bathrooms, it doesn't have bathrooms, it's like, it seems like it's the most neglected park in the entire county. And yeah, there are issues there, because it's neglected, there's nothing there to entertain younger kids, there's one little park for grade school kids. And even a simple ability to walk parameter of, you know, if you're walking your dog, it would just be nice if you were walking, not have to go back the same way, it's like a long fence, you can just kind of filler, doesn't have to be a real sidewalk, anything to improve it, you have this label, horseshoes, basketball court, something should be there, and that, they took the sport out and never to be seen again. There's just no resources there at all. It's a wonder that it's trying to be infiltrated by homeless and everything else.
Right. Okay, yeah, well, I'll discuss some options with the Parks Director to, you know, see if we have a master plan for Winkle Park and what additional investments could be made there. I mean, one of the good things is we did recently increase development impact fees specifically for parks. So if some of this housing goes into the lot next door, there would be, or other places along SoCal Drive, there would be strong justification to reinvest in Winkle Park. Since I think everyone here has asked at least one question, I want to make sure the online audience has an opportunity if anyone has questions online that they want to pose before I can bring it back for a second round of questions. Yep. Okay, if you do have a question, you're welcome to just hit the raise hand icon. Okay, I'm not seeing anyone, so I'm going to return to the in-person audience here. Yes, would you, sir? So the question was, what's the status of the drive-in theater property? That's owned by Sutter. And they, you know, of course, they used it for the largest mass vaccination clinic in the county. Vaccinated, I think, over 80,000 people at that clinic. And so I think, I mean, they've been hesitant to do any other temporary uses because of the efficacy of that program. I think long-term, they're considering building some kind of oncology center there, as well as, you know, potentially some housing as well. I had, one meeting where they expressed interest in some kind of combined project for an oncology center and housing, but haven't heard from them recently. And I don't know how strong their level of interest is. I will say that in general, our market is really hard for healthcare because there's so many folks who are on either Medicare or Medi-Cal, and the reimbursement rates for both of those are very low. And so I think Sutter actually loses money in our market. And so, they're not strongly incentivized to make a huge new investment in our area, although I think oncology is one area they see some potential.
So the swap is not coming back.
I don't, to my knowledge, they don't have any plans to bring the swap meet back in the short term. I mean, and I mean, I heard a lot of, especially during the campaign, a lot of complaints from folks in the Winkle Park neighborhood are about the impact of that on the whole area. So I'm not rushing to advocate to bring it back at the moment, but if there was a strong interest, I'd love to hear it. So the question is, if I would have any part in building another oncology unit when there's one at Dominican? Yeah, I mean, right. Yes, so right. Sutter does not get money from the county. If they did have they actually lose money, or as they claim they lose money in this county because of the number of people who are on Medicare, Medi-Cal, that they see that the reimbursement rates are effectively lower than the cost of service. If they did propose any kind of project, whether it's an oncology center or some mix of housing as well, I imagine it would be large enough to qualify for a discretionary use permit, and it would come before the board ultimately for review.
And we're doing that, go shopping, I don't up with my car, but I just set our bike lanes painted. Let's say I decide I was going to ride my bike somewhere. How can I be sure I have a safe place on next door? Talk about how they double up their bike. Someone's doing anything. It seems like you're wanting to encourage people to ride bikes, but once we get to our destination, I want to go to the store somewhere, my bike is to be there.
Yeah, definitely part of the code updates in the sustainability update are to ensure that more bike parking spots get put in, both for residential and commercial uses. Bike theft is really hard to crack down on, just because of, I mean, if you register your bike, that's the best thing you can do. If you get, go through your bike shop and get a license that, they record your serial number and then link it to the bike. That way, if someone does steal your bike, we can actually, and we find it, we can get it back, we can prosecute them for bike theft. Most people don't do that. And so it's very hard to figure out if, that bike doesn't belong to the person who happens to be in possession of it, or prove in court that they stole it. So that's the biggest problem we face, is really enforcement when it comes to bike theft. But I highly recommend you register your bike.
But doesn't if I get out of the store?
I understand. We are trying to get more, more bike parking installed in different locations. Yeah. Mhm. Right.
Anything that stops the halls. So we now have. It's just a mistake. I come up on that side. Sidewalk.
Okay, so you got 3 points, if I could just address them before. So the first was regarding school bus funding. It's great that there's more money from the state. That is definitely an opportunity. I'm glad to see that our state lawmakers agree about the importance of funding school buses. Probably, I think the strongest play we could have that would bring more of that funding into the county would be if we also had a local funding source as well, so that we can either, that's how a lot of projects get funded. We'll put up at least 20% of the funding, and that makes us more competitive when we apply for money from the state. So could be that if that money is consistently available from the state, we could ask that, just for a smaller local match from folks here. Right. Okay, so maybe the fee structure is both a parcel tax as well as parents paying for it as well, and then something from the state. I hear you about the CHP being able to come out at specific times when you're experiencing the most traffic on Thurber and doing some enforcement then. We'll definitely talk to Officer Busath with CHP about some of those specific times. It sounds like around school hours and mornings and okay, 5 p.m. on weekdays. And then finally, that's crosswalk at Helen. I don't know, I'd have to review that with our active transportation manager and see why it didn't make it into the striping plan, or if it's something that could be corrected. Yeah, the sidewalks are, yeah, up that side. It's going to be challenging, but certainly should be in there as a long-term project. Okay. Yeah. I believe there's a proposal for a Walgreens or CVS there. I've seen. There's both proposal from if it's not a CVS, then we've also heard something about a Starbucks going in there. I could follow up with you and see what specific app. The last I heard was, like I said, Walgreens or Starbucks. Yeah.
Like Santana Road, we rate, housing above, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, so it is outside the county's jurisdiction. It's within the city of Capitola. But the mall is actually a number of different parcels. I want to say it's like 5 total. A company called Merlin Geyer bought the majority of them, and did put together plans to build about 600 units of housing over on the Sears side of the mall, and then also to open air it. And so that instead of, there would actually, I think their plans had 38th coming in all the way into the center of the mall and then going out towards the Clara Street side. And I want to say that, I don't know if the street actually came in from off of 41st Avenue and then, formed a T there, but to try to make it so you could peruse the mall by car, also to open air it a little bit and improve the bus station there. So yes, those plans are there. I think they've just are stalled right now because of the economic climate, particularly around commercial real estate with COVID and, the coming out of the pandemic. Yeah. Right. So the question is, what's going on with the it was the proposed Nissan dealership at 41st and SoCal. So that was entitled by the county for, we effectively provided the permits that they could move forward with the Nissan dealership. This was back at the end of 2020 or maybe even 2019. But Groppetti then decided it was not going to be a profitable enterprise and has since decided not to move forward with building a car dealership and has offered the property for sale. So I'm sure you've seen the for sale signs, roughly 9.95 million if you'd like to buy it for 2.5 acres. I've heard some interest from potential developers who are looking at it. It was in escrow. It's not at the moment. So we could see some other project come forward. But it's most likely would not be it's permitted for a car dealership if someone else wanted to come in, but that's not what I'm hearing now. Yeah, I would be I would be more supportive of a mixed use project, with both residential and commercial. That I completely agree, and that's the kind of use that I would support. Okay, well, if there's no further questions, we'll bring the meeting to a close. Thanks for everyone. Oh, I'm sorry, Tim, our online question. Thank you to our online audience for struggling through some technical difficulties tonight. Tim, go ahead.
Hi. I was just after a year and a half still concerned about the homeless issues on both sides of Bromer near the park. Again, there's been another fire recently. And we have a lot of residents that are very concerned about, that possible danger, as well as all the garbage on each side of the road down on each side. I mean, we notice that some of it gets picked up on the side of the road, but there's still a lot down, in the Gulch area. So, after almost a year and a half, can't there be more progress made with this?
Yeah, so, thanks for bringing it up, Tim. Is there anything on the north? We've tried to address the public property there. So at Bromer Street Park, as well as kind of the area below the road. That is county property. And so that's why we were able to clear the encampments there, as well as the trash. If someone's come back and we need to go back in, happy to do it. But the area where the fire was most recently, unfortunately, that is an example of, private property owner not taking action. We have asked them to clear the property. In this case, it's a gentleman who, a senior gentleman who owns the property. I don't know if they just don't have the funds or, have been unable to pay for that property to be cleared. And it's an example of where the county could take greater enforcement actions, say that at this point it's a public nuisance, or maybe go ahead and clear the property and put a lien on it. But that's just, I think we are moving forward with those kinds of solutions in a number of cases. And so we could certainly consider it for that property as well. But, that's why that particular area where the fire broke out, we didn't do anything sooner, just because it's private.
Well, also on the side of the Gulch where the county yard is, right down in there, there's a bunch of garbage there. And we see people going down in there all the time. So
Okay, well, I'll work with our deputy for the area to check out that spot along the county yard as well and.
Yeah,
in the
I mean,
gulch.
we really appreciate it because we've been concerned about this for quite some time and, you know, you're going to keep hearing from me, unfortunately.
Well, we'll keep patrolling it and see if we can take additional action to clear out that trash and work with the property owner to get it clean.
And also I was asked to fill out a form, you know, with a complaint with the property owner, which I did through the county. So I did that quite a few months ago. All right.
Okay.
Please
Thanks, Tim.
continue to help us.
Will do. All right, thank you, everyone. I'll stick around for a few more minutes if there's anything you want to discuss privately.